The U.S. women's soccer equal pay lawsuit is a joke. Now, before you call me sexist or say this is my male privilege speaking, let me explain to you exactly why the lawsuit that they filed was denied and why it should have been. You see, recently this went to court and the women's soccer team was claiming that they're being paid less simply because they're women. And the judge said this is inaccurate and essentially dismissed the claim. Now, it should come as no surprise to you that for the past year, perhaps more, the women's soccer team has been claiming pay disparity because they're women. And the media, being the media, parroted that claim. You see here from The Guardian talking about the gender pay gap between the men and the women's teams. Or you see from The Atlantic that the women's team makes a good case for equal pay. The implication there being they're paid less simply because they're women. But that's not accurate. Most of these articles don't really look at the reasons they're being paid less, which is simply because they have a different contract. And that is the reason the case was dismissed. However, some articles, like this one from Forbes and many others, don't actually highlight that. They say it was dismissed and talk about the judge who did it, but not necessarily the reason why. After this happened, Rapinoe, who I believe is the captain of the women's soccer team, said, if we were under the men's contract, which for the record we asked to be, if we were under that contract, we would, earn at least 3 times higher than we have. So here we have Rapinoe saying that they're being paid less because they were never offered the contract that the men have. Now, if that were accurate, then maybe they'd have a point here. But the problem is, it's not. As I pointed out, many of these articles don't really look at the contract differences between them. They just say they're being paid less because they're women. But this article from NPR actually does. It does highlight a quote from the judge who dismissed the case talking about the contracts, but more importantly, it links to the actual court notes. So here you can see from May 1st the minutes of this case, which is important because we can look at the actual reasons why it was dismissed. So here I'm going to jump to just 2 really important points. So as it says here, during the first rounds of negotiations for the new contract in 2016, the women's team was asking for all the upsides of the men's team's benefits without any of the drawbacks. Now, just to kind of highlight what that means, the men's team has a high-risk, high-reward contract, whereas the women's team has a low-risk, low-reward. What that means is that the men's team get paid significantly more if they actually do well and if they play more games. But if someone doesn't play in a particular game, that means that for the men's contract, they would not be paid. They get nothing. For the women's team, however, we can see that when they were offered a pay-to-play proposal similar to what the men got, they rejected it because they wanted some element of guaranteed compensation. Simply put, if you are on the women's soccer team, even if you never play throughout the entire season, you're still going to get paid. But if that person were on the men's team and they never played, they would get no salary whatsoever. Like I said, it's a high risk, high reward for the men and a low risk, low reward for the women. And just to reiterate, he continues and says, the women's team rejected an offer to be paid under the same pay-to-play structure as the men's team. And he's dismissing the claim because, as he says, plaintiffs cannot now retroactively deem their contracts worse than the contracts by the men by reference to what they would have made had they had that contract, which makes complete sense. If you make a contract back in 2016, and then you say, actually, I could earn more with a different contract now in 2019, you can't retroactively go back and try to change your contract. That's not how it works. That's not how it should work. So the judge dismissed the case, and rightfully so. Rapinoe, however, says that's wrong. Here from an article from CNN, she says that the men's contract was never offered to us, and certainly not the same amount of money. So they're telling 2 completely different stories here. Megan is saying they never got the offer, and the judge is saying that they did get the offer. Now, I obviously don't know 100% who's telling the truth, because I can't see the offers that were made. However, it is important to note that the judge, when talking about the offers that were made, has a reference right here. It's not a reference I can see, but it exists. And that, to me, lends more credence to the judge than it does to Rapinoe. So based on that, I think it's fair to say that the women's team was offered, if not the same exact pay as the men's team, at least something similar. Yet they rejected it because they wanted lower risk instead. Which is fine. If you want to have a different contract, that's okay. But then you can't 2 years later say you want to change your contract. It shouldn't work like that. And that's why it's a good thing this lawsuit was dismissed. Now, because he really wants to win and be president, Joe Biden decided to talk about this. He said to the women, don't give up this fight. This is not over yet. And then to US soccer, equal pay now. Or else when I'm president, you can go elsewhere for World Cup funding. So once again, we see that Joe Biden doesn't really understand what's going on because he has no idea they agreed to a different contract. What are you going to do? Force the World Cup to change its contract because these women want to get paid more? And I was under the impression that those on the left think that profit seeking is a negative. So why is it okay when a women's soccer team does it, but not when a business owner wants to do it? I don't understand. Now, I recognize that in the grand scheme of things, this is not the most important news story. I just really wanted to talk about it because it kind of cements the idea of where everybody stands. Without having any of the information already, people on the left, or who are liberal, tend to say, yes, this is just exemplifying the horrific pay gap that exists in the world or in the United States more generally. However, those on the right say that's complete nonsense and they agree to this contract. Generally speaking, the gender pay gap is not a thing. Most of it goes away based on your sole decisions and choices. And here, it's no different. They chose a different contract because they wanted to have less risk involved. You cannot now change that because you want to earn more money. And I hope that cleared things up for you and now you're more informed. Feel free to look at the court documents if you want. Everything is linked down below in the description, but I highlighted, I think, the most important points here. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.